with the cowling now off the airplane and it is obviously back on the workbench, again, my little reference marks are still in place. These are the ones for the baffle that I just kind of sort of finished. So I'm going to use those marks to realign the baffle that I just finished working on. So I'm going to take, so this is the baffle that I've just shaped. I'm going to take the edge of the baffle just like I had done before. I'm going to line it up with my reference mark here. And I'm going to set the rest of the baffle basically in line with these marks here. Again, that's just to make sure that the baffle is situated on the cowling fore and aft. So this reference on the edge is left and right, and these tick marks are reference fore and aft. So this is the side that I'm working on now. This has not been cut at all. You can see how it sticks up well beyond the shape of this one that I just finished. I have them now clecoed together. I'm going to line this one up with my reference marks. Something like this. But however, you can see, obviously, since this piece has not been trimmed, it is preventing this piece from laying the way it's supposed to, right? So with it in place roughly, you can see now, hopefully there's not a lot of reflection, but you can see the gap now that's underneath this side that I just made because it's sitting on the other side of the cowling here. But that's okay. So what I'm going to do now is, now that I have this held in place, I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to run it along the edge just like I had done before. I'm going to cut that piece off, then I'll set this back in place. I'll put the marker down and I'll make another mark along the edge. I'll cut that off, then I'll put this back in place, and I'll keep doing that. So with that held in place, I'll take the marker and I'll run it across the cowling and make a mark on the baffle, cut that piece off, bring this back, put it in place, take the marker, drag it again along the bottom of the cowling, cut that piece off, put this whole segment back in place, and I'll keep working it down until this side of the baffle comes back down and lays on the cowling just as if it was by itself without the other one attached. That will help me locate this side in relation to this side because it's already clecoed. And then, like I said, as I continue to trim it, it will allow this baffle to come down and rest on the cowling. So the alignment across should be correct, and the relationship between that piece and this piece should be correct, and the contour of the cowl in relation to this piece being trimmed should be correct. When I get it close, I'll fit this piece to the engine by itself without this one. We know this one fits. So I'll put this one on the engine by itself, put the cowling on, and see if I can get the cowling to sit correctly without resting on top of this. That's the plan. So I've got my initial mark on this piece now. Right now it's just this little wedge right here. So I'm going to cut this wedge off, put this whole assembly back in place, make a new mark, and then cut that off and repeat. Of course, as I do that, as I cut this piece off, put this in place, make my new mark, that new mark is going to keep marching its way up here, and it's also going to continue to get longer and longer, so I'll be taking more and more material off in this orientation as well. But I want to creep up on it. I've got a flange here with a hole in it. I don't want to take too much off of here if I can help it. But of course, it has to fit the cowling, so if this gets lopped off, that's fine. But I'm just going to creep up on it just like I did this piece. All right? Talk to you guys here in a minute. So while I'm marking this side and taking it off a little bit at a time, I'm now at the point where you can see my marker here is right in line with the edge of this piece. So this piece comes across, and that's exactly where my marker is lined up. And then of course it continues all the way across and just the very corner of this flange. So you need to be careful of that. It's possible that had I marked this the way that I've been marking it, if the line would have been up here, I would not have want to cut it up there, because then this edge is here and then this edge would be back here, and that'd take off way too much material. So you want to make sure that this top edge of this piece is in line with the top edge of this piece. And it just so worked out that when I had these in place on the cowling and I was running the marker, I ran the marker across to make this line here. And then when I looked at it, this line is now perfectly in alignment with the edge of this piece. So I'm very comfortable cutting this entire length off. And this piece should now be equal height from the cowling as this piece. So I'm going to make this cut. I'm going to put this piece on the engine, and then I'm going to fit the cowling on. If the cowling sits down all the way without any interference, I'm going to have to try to figure out how I'm going to get in there and look at the gap between here and the cowling itself. But let me get this cut, let me get it installed, let me get the cowling on and see how things look. Howdy everyone. Alrighty, so I've been working on the baffles, of course, and I now have the side baffles in place and roughly cut to shape. And by that I mean I just have them cut down enough so that the top cowling will fit, and I can pin it to the bottom cowling and I can pin it to the fuselage. I don't really care what the shape of the baffle is. I just want to make sure that the baffles are short enough that the top cowling will go on and I can get everything pinned. Now that I've got the baffles in place, I can get the cowling on with the baffles in place. I'm going to try this paper clip thing. Now this is not my idea. I've heard about it. I haven't researched it. But I think the gist of it is that you put on paper clips all the way around the top of your baffles, and you put the cowling on. The paper clips are going to slide down depending on where the top of the cowling connects with them, touches them, and pushes them down. Then you take the cowling off, and I'm assuming at that point you would just measure from the top of each paper clip down a half an inch and make a mark, or 3/8 of an inch, whatever space you want between the cowling and the top of the baffle. The instructions that I've been reading, they say 3/8 minimum gap to a half inch maximum gap. I'm going to shoot for about a half an inch. So like I said, you put in your paper clips all the way around the top edge of the baffle and put the cowling on. It's going to push the paper clips down, and then you measure, I'm assuming, like I said, I haven't researched it, but at that point you have to measure from the top of the paper clip down whatever space you want. I'm going to do a half inch and then make a mark. And then you do that at each paper clip location. Then you come back and connect the dots, and then that will be your final cut line. That should give you an equal half-inch distance all the way around for all the baffles. I believe that's how it works. That's how I'm going to do it and see what happens. Just a couple things to make note. If you have, like here, there's a cleco sticking through. I can't put a paper clip there, obviously, right? But something that may not be as obvious is I have this piece here, and it has a bottom to it right here. So if I had taken a long paper clip like this one and put it in this location here, the cowling wouldn't push it down because the bottom of the paper clip would bottom out on this. So I made sure to use a small paper clip here, and it's got plenty of room to move down if the cowling sits on it. You don't want a paper clip holding your cowling up. So when you're putting your paper clips in, make sure that you put them in locations where they have plenty of room to slide down. You don't want them getting hung up on clecos or getting hung up on nut plates or things like that. All right. So I've got my paper clips are on all the way around the baffles. And there's no science to how I put them. I just spaced them the way that I thought would be enough to connect dots. Nothing fancy. So let me get this cowling on and we'll see what happens. Talk to you guys later. So here are the paper clips now that I've set the cowl in place and removed it. You can see, I'll show you on the other side as a better example, but you can see here that these are upright still. They have moved, but they're still upright. I've got one here that turns sideways. I don't know if that means that, I don't know what that means. You can see the ones here up front. These kind of got all cattywampus, but I'm still going to measure from the high point of each one and cut it off, cut the baffle off. These along the back look pretty good. And then the ones over on the other side there, those are the ones that are laid over quite a bit. Let me go around to that side. And I believe that is nothing more than an indicator of the cowling is that close. So here's the other side, paper clips. They moved around a little bit, but they did their job. But these through here, these are laying down quite a bit. And like I said, I think that's just an indicator of two things, that the cowling was pretty tight in this area in relation to the baffles, or while putting the baffles in place, putting the cowling in place, it just kind of moved around and drug them over. But again, the high point of each one should be where the cowling was touching. So I'm going to leave these like they are. I'm going to mark from the high point of each one down. I'm going to do 3/8 of an inch instead of half. And then I'll do this again. After I get all the baffles trimmed, I'll reposition all the paper clips, put the cowling on again, and see how they look. It'll be interesting to see if this does the same thing through here. So that's that. Let me pull these, or let me make these marks, and then I'll cut the baffles down and I'll come back. And I will talk about these side baffles and this. You've got the back part of the side baffle, and then you've got this front part of the side baffle. And I'll talk about I'll talk about getting those shaped here in a minute. But let me take care of these clips, and I'll talk to you guys later.